Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third workshop in a series of workshops related to the Designing for Empathy Summit and workshops for 2021. We are delighted to have you joining us today. My name is Greg Stevens, and it is my pleasure to be here as your co-host and moderator for this and all of our workshops and the summit itself. I'm especially delighted to be here and to be welcomed by my colleague Elif Goksikdem, who is the ringleader of all of this. Elif, hello.
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And sorry for the technical difficulties. We have been having these, in the first few workshops as well. Hopefully, we will smooth everything out, and the summit will be a great and seamless experience for all. And these workshops are meant to be experimental spaces, so it comes with the territory, I guess. So thank you very much for joining us. And before welcoming Kevin and Ryan, I would like to just make brief remarks, and my apologies for those who have been in other workshops, because these are recorded and will be available afterwards. I'm trying to provide a little context in each session, and these are not long remarks, only 3 minutes, but please allow me to just provide a little context about why we are doing this, what is Designing for Empathy, what is a Designing for Empathy workshop. Our main goal with the Designing for Empathy workshops and summits is to create a platform where individuals from different backgrounds, disciplines, and sectors can come together to develop solutions to the empathy deficit in our world. We believe that our ability to develop individuals' capacity for empathy towards the oneness of all beings, all of humanity, the environment, and the planet, lies at the heart of our ability to solve our most complex problems. The challenges we face today, from social injustice to climate change, are not because we lack the intellectual capacity, the technologies, or the resources to tackle them, but it is because caring for others as much as we care for ourselves, as if that other could be me, which makes us want to take action to alleviate the suffering of another, requires a major perspective shift. This is where we stop seeing ourselves as the centers of the universe and start recognizing that we are all interconnected parts of something much greater than ourselves. This pragmatic perspective shift can only be achieved through a lived experience. And empathy, our ability to imagine the world through another's perspective, provides the foundation. To me, and this may not be the most scientific explanation, but my experience of empathy is that something extraordinary happens when we empathize. Because of our inherent ability to empathize, our ego, which always puts I, me, myself in the front and center, gets distracted momentarily, while our true self, which is deeply rooted in our heart, in the qualities of compassion and love, takes the helm of our attention and channels it and immerses it in another's perspective. This is not always easy, because it requires us to look at the world in a whole new way. Instead of placing ourselves in the center of the universe, we realize that we are, and as a matter of fact, each being in the circle of oneness is unique and an essential component of our existence. This pragmatic perspective shift can only happen through an experience, and that's where Designing for Empathy comes in. We believe that because empathy can be best learned through lived experiences, creating those authentic experiences where individuals can discover, unlock, and advance their potential for empathy in safe and non-judgmental spaces become more essential. Designing for Empathy workshops are here to provide a platform for a group of diverse individuals to come together and experiment with the creation of these perspective-shifting experiences that lead to a spark of empathy on a long journey towards a realization of the oneness of all beings. Thank you so much for being here. And with that, I would like to welcome JAAGO'S Kevin, Shah, and Ryan Driscoll. And I would love it if you can just please briefly introduce yourselves.
And Elif, before we do that, please let me take a moment to provide a land acknowledgement since I am calling in from New York City. And we most certainly want to acknowledge that New York City is built on the ancestral lands of the Lenape people, who continue to be key and guiders of this land. And Elif, I know you're calling from Washington, D.C., which is on the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Piscataway and Anacostan peoples, who also continue to serve as stewards of that region. So thank you for allowing me to offer that land acknowledgement. And now we can turn it over officially to Ryan and Kevin.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you for that, Greg. And what's funny is I have my land acknowledgement here because we're based in Seattle, and I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. I am the CEO and co-founder of JAAGO. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm also known as Captain Empathy. And that is because I believe that empathy is a real superpower in our world. It is something that we all can dream to fly and teleport, but empathy exists. And if we learn that superpower, we all can become superheroes and become Captain Empathy ourselves. So this is an invitation to welcome you all. We are excited to bring JAAGO'S Empathy Stretch workshop to you, where JAAGO is the world's first and only empathy gym, mobile app, and program to make empathy a daily habit by spending 3 minutes a day. And we'll talk more about it. And I've got my amazing co-founder and chief learning officer, Ryan Driscoll.
Hi all, I'm Ryan. I use he, him pronouns. And to add to Kevin's land acknowledgement, I put a quick little link into the chat, which is a opportunity to actually give to the Duwamish people and to take our land acknowledgements to kind of the next level of actually, doing things to support tribes that live in our area. So, give me just a second. I'm going to. So, we can go to the next slide real quick, Kevin. Thank you. So we have three objectives that we're going to be aiming for today. The first is to explore the concepts of a cultural lens and how they're connected to things like unconscious bias and how they impact the way we view and engage in the world. Then we're going to spend the bulk of our time, ideally, giving you all an opportunity to do a little bit of an examination of the various dimensions of your own identity and how those impact your cultural lens, and they are shaped by the various intersections of experiences and aspects of identity in your life. And then we're going to practice sharing those. And so this is going to be fairly interactive. It's going to be a little vulnerable. And so as we go into this workshop, we really encourage you, if you feel comfortable, to turn your camera on. We're going to ask you to be unmuting yourself and doing some sharing and pushing yourself a little bit. So in order to create a space to do that, we're going to go over a couple of quick norms. Before we hit those norms, we'd love to have an opportunity for people to do a little bit of introduction in the chat. Oh, great question. Will the recording section be, or will the sharing section be recorded? At that point, I might ask that we pause the recording because there will be sharing of personal things. So once we kind of get to the more personal part, if that's okay, we'll pause the recording. Does that sound?
Absolutely. Just let me know.
Okay. So in the chat, if you can add your name, your pronouns if you'd like to add them, and then one thing that you're hoping to take away from today. It's helpful for Kevin and I to know what people are hoping to take away from the session.
And so while we continue with the norms, please go ahead and add in the chat.
And while we're doing that, I'm going to go through our norms. So the first is we ask that you give yourself the gift of this hour with us and be present. So if you have any email applications open or your phone nearby, we ask that you just close those things out and give yourself this time to be here. The second is we encourage you to ask questions. So you can either throw them into the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. And if you don't feel comfortable asking a question out publicly or want to be associated with the question, you can do a private chat to Kevin or myself, and we will take that as an anonymous question and not associate with any one particular person. The third is, as we said, we're going to have an opportunity to be sharing some personal experiences and personal reflections. And so we ask that the specific stories and details of things stay in this session, but the lessons that you learn from it can leave with you. The fourth is asking to share the airtime. There's not a ton of us here today, so hopefully this won't be too big of a deal, but just being aware of how much space you're taking up in participating. If you're someone who's more extroverted like me, making sure that you're not dominating that space too much and creating space for others. And if you're someone who's a little more reserved, we encourage you to make sure that that you have the opportunity to push yourself and your voice is heard, because your experience is important and we want everyone to have an opportunity to contribute. The fifth is to be open to new ideas and let ideas that sink a little bit deeper. So if some things we're talking about today are new, we ask that you're just open to taking those in. And if things we're talking about today are things that you have already heard before, just use this as an opportunity to let those sink a little bit deeper for you. And then finally, we ask that you aim for your growth zone. And so what we mean by that is when we think about some like the different experiences that we go into, there are kind of three different zones. So Kevin, if you can hit the next slide. There's our comfort zone. It's the area where we're very comfortable. Everything feels very safe. We're used to doing these things. There's our growth zone where we are pushing ourselves a little bit more. It can feel a little uncomfortable as we're growing. And then finally, there's the danger zone. And the danger zone is when things are way too far outside of what we're used to. It's not just uncomfortable, it can be almost paralyzing. We don't want anyone to end up in their danger zone. So if you start to feel yourself getting into that space, then do what you need to do to kind of bring yourself back to your safe zone. If there's anything that Kevin and I can do to assist in that, please let us know as well. And throughout this entire workshop, share to the level of your comfort, pushing yourself to that growth zone, share what's going to be maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but we don't want anyone to be sharing or participating in a way that's going to make them feel like they're in their danger zone, and then they're just feeling unsafe. So going to the chat real quick, learning about at least one concrete strategy to practice empathy. Awesome, we're gonna get to do that together. Learning from the perspectives of others and how it enables reflection on your own perspective. Excellent. Immersing myself in deep listening and a sharing exercise. That is right up the alley of what we're gonna be doing. Okay, and thank you. I hope I'm saying it correctly, Kirsten, for letting us know that you're in a loud place. So no worries, again, to the level that you can in both where you're at with all things. So jumping in. Empathy, the definition of empathy that we often use is the active process of putting oneself into the perspective world of another. And empathy, in essence, is based on how we would feel in a situation or how we think others feel. So if we think of kind of the different buckets of empathy, there's things like cognitive empathy, where I see something happening and I'm trying to think, okay, how would I feel in that situation? Or there might be emotional empathy, where something's happening and then I feel the way that I would feel in that situation. But the key here is that a lot of our empathy skill is based on our own perspective or our own experiences, right? We're doing a lot of projecting of how we would feel or we think we would feel in a particular situation. And so because of that, our sense of empathy is really influenced by our cultural lens. It's influenced by the way that we view the world. Right? And so that's going to include things like our unconscious biases that play into how we are viewing things. And these lenses are also built over our entire lives. They're based on where we grew up. They're based on people we've interacted with. They're based on experiences that we've had and the cultures that we've been exposed to. So all of these different things are building the way that we can relate to the world. And so when someone else or something else is happening to someone else and we trigger our empathy, it's all going to be filtered through this lens of how we view things. Next slide, please, Kevin. So what we're gonna, how do we build awareness of this lens, right? So if we know that every time we're being empathetic, we are potentially, projecting our own thoughts, our own feelings onto the situation, the more awareness we can build of this lens, the better we can be at trying to take out our filters and try to put on, I often say, the glasses of viewing things through another person's lens. So one of the best ways to do that is through mindfulness or self-empathy, right? Becoming aware of when our experiences or our emotions are playing into and filtering the way that we view things. It's also really important to pair that with reflection, reflecting on the ways that different aspects of our identity and our different experiences have impacted our lives and how those experiences have shaped the view that we have of the world and how we interact with different situations. So the more aware that we can become of those lenses and the unconscious biases that are associated with them, the more we can create these mental checks for ourselves, right? For some, that might be recognizing when these unconscious biases are tied to systems of oppression, and we're recognizing when views that we're bringing or thoughts that we're having are coming from these systems. So these kind of more negative impacts, we can put mental checks in place for ourselves and say, oh, this is a situation where my cultural conditioning, my socialization might be kind of coming up and triggering. So I need to make sure that I'm checking myself for that right now. It also allows us to more easily switch between the views of different people. The better we get at understanding our own lens, the easier it becomes for us to understand how different people might have different lenses and jump between those things. So we're gonna practice that. Rather than, I think, play, what we'll do is I'll just give a very quick example of what we're going to be asking you all to do. And that is we're going to start by doing some just personal reflection on where do we come from? What aspects of our identity have been really important in shaping, oh, Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, did you want to share the video? I have it ready if you wanted to. The video, example video?
I think since the volume on that is a little low and because we're a little low on time, I'm just going to jump.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, perfect. So Kevin's alluding to, we have a video example, but I think to give us more time to chat, I'm just going to share a brief personal example. So an aspect of my identity that I often think of as really shaping the way I view the world is where I grew up. So I grew up in a small town in rural Minnesota, and that's shaped a couple of different ways that I view the world. One of them is we grew up with a concept called Minnesota nice, where we are always nice to people when we are in front of them. And if we have anything negative or sometimes even constructive to say, we do it when they're not around, which is not a great way to engage in productive conflict. It can lead to a lot of issues, but it's something that I was socialized into doing and have had to learn to recognize. Another way that growing up in a small town has influenced the way I view the world is it intersects with another aspect of my identity, which is identifying as a gay male. And so growing up in a small town, I didn't feel comfortable coming out. And so there was a lot of me reflecting and feeling like I needed to hide aspects of my identity and not be able to share my true self with others. And so that has influenced a lot of the work that I've done towards wanting to work with others. And I think in many ways guided me towards this work in empathy, where I want to help create a place where everyone can be their true selves and put themselves out there. So those are some brief examples of how one aspect, or in this, I guess, two aspects of my identity have played into shaping the way that I view the world. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to give you all 5 minutes. And what we want you to do is to take these 5 minutes and to just reflect on what are some aspects of your identity that have really shaped how you view things. And in particular, we want you to pick out 1 or 2 of them that you would feel comfortable sharing with others. So during this time, there's a list right here of a variety of different aspects of identity. If you don't see something on here that you think is an important aspect of your identity, please feel free to do that. There's an other category and you can utilize that. But we're going to take these 5 minutes and just give you some time to reflect, and then we'll have an opportunity to practice what I was just demonstrating and do some sharing. Come back. And before we go into these sharing, we're gonna do one final little thing to keep in mind, and then I'm gonna pass it over to Kevin and we're gonna start sharing stuff. So when doing this activity, one of the things we wanna be aware of and recognize is that this type of activity encourages you to be vulnerable. And one of the things that both Kevin and I believe is that in order to be empathetic, there needs to be an element of vulnerability. Empathy is based on connecting with and oftentimes feeling with other people. And in order to be open to that connection and open to those feelings, there is just an inherent amount of vulnerability in being open to that. So as we go into this activity, we encourage you to lean into that vulnerability, lean into that discomfort a little bit, again, to the area of your growth zone, and share something that, pushes you to grow a little without putting you into an area where you're sharing something that makes you completely uncomfortable. So I'm going to pass it over to Kevin, and he'll go over our directions for what we're going to do.
So as Ryan shared in his example, what we're hoping for is for you to take that moment to reflect, take the moment to share your story. Sharing your story gives you that power. The video we were going to share had basically the idea of cultural lens was this young Hispanic girl who basically grew up in an environment where she learned Spanish in a different way. She went to a school, and a lot of the Spanish speaking people assumed that she didn't speak Spanish because of her cultural lens, even though she did. But then, so she just let that happen and let them believe that. And then she shares her story around how she sort of navigated that, and where she didn't feel like she fit into that community where that people assume that she was part of as well. So it's interesting in the story that what it does is helps us be curious and helps reduce our assumptions. So in this time, we're going to do 2 breakout rooms. We're going to just split everyone into 2 breakout rooms. And during the breakout rooms, we encourage you to turn your video on if you can. And if you can't, that's okay. Use chat if you have audio issues. But encourage you to, even if it's a little bit loud, just unmute, and then just, I'm sure people will give you the grace and kindness to listen intently. So during this time, we want each person to use the 2 identities, the 2 culture aspects of their cultural lens, and just share their story. So the way I would mock this up is in the beginning, it'll be a little awkward. Someone just break the ice and say, I'll just go and let me share my story. And then everyone just listen intently. When the story sharing is done, we please thank them for when they finish. And then once that is done, when everyone gets a chance to share their story. So go in the rotation, spend 3 to 5 minutes per person. And then once that is done, discuss using these 3 questions, and we'll put the questions in the chat. And then if you do get cut off because of time, we'll continue this discussion as a group when you come back out as well. But think about this after the story. First, listen to the story, deep listening. Don't think about these questions initially. Just try to put yourself into their story. What about each of these stories resonated with you? What was the experience of sharing these reflections like? And what was the experience of listening to these reflections? And if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. All right. So any other questions? If not, we're going to kick it off and go in the breakout room. For time-wise, we're going to give you all 15 minutes to do this exercise.
Actually, we can give them, we'll go 20, and then we'll come back to 20.
All right.
Diversity here.
Ms. Craig?
I'm having major participating, and thank you for taking the time and the gift for yourselves and sharing this community. Just want to, like, this is, you can use chat or you can unmute yourself. Everyone's welcome to contribute. How did that exercise feel? Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, to me, this felt like really like a nice remedy for the soul. It was just so profound, and I'll probably get emotional now, but that's what empathy does to you. I think when you share, truly share and open up and be there for others, and see them and hear them share openly and willingly. It is such a treasure, such a treasure. Thank you for making it available.
Oh, thank you. And this was more all of you all doing the work and being vulnerable and being powerful and being superheroes. Y'all are Captain Empathy in this journey. How did your similarities and differences from your group impact how easy or hard it was for you to relate to their stories? Anyone want to share?
Um, I was very surprised in how many things I could relate to at least. And it made me feel so much more comfortable, even talking about the things that normally I would feel judged about talking about them. So yeah, I just got like, I think I got like really emotional and I was like, we talked for another like 20 minutes. I'm gonna give you all of my secrets.
Oh, see, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And anyone else? I see some comments. It was nice. That was a great experience. So many great connections and curiosity sparked about other perspectives. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Please help me pronounce your name? Is it Sering?
Yeah, hello. Okay. Kevin, yeah, it's exactly. It's saying, yeah.
Sering. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Welcome, most welcome. Yeah.
One of the similarity differences, and you mentioned Rihanna, right? Is that how I pronounce it? Rihanna?
It's Rayhane, like Ray from
Rehane.
Star Wars
Thank
and then
you.
Han from Star Wars and then A.
Love it. Oh, I love how you Rehane. One of the stories we've done this workshop with multinational global companies, and one of the stories someone shared from France was, like you said, feel like I wouldn't share inside, but feeling judged because I didn't realize. So they were feeling all these conflicted feelings about different things, and they were blaming themselves. And when they went through this workshop, they realized that it was their cultural lens and what their lived experience helped them get here. So understanding that sort of helped them unpack that disturbance that they're feeling and gave themselves that openness to change and grow and understand. And so would love to understand, how did learning these things about each other impact the way you see or understand each other? How did that impact you? Anyone, and you can use chat or unmute. You just go ahead. It's a conversation. It's a small group, so we can have a nice conversation. Yeah, Elif.
I started talking too much all of a sudden, but I'll keep it brief. But my experience, I've met Rehane for the first time, and Tashi La from Tibetan Museum I met 4 years ago, or almost 5 years ago, and but we met in a very busy scenario. We were having the summit. There was a meeting with the Dalai Lama, and it was just very busy. We never really got a chance to talk or get to know each other or know anything personal about each other, other than the fact that we were all in the same space and participating in the same exercises. So this made me really, really appreciate knowing more about Tashi's, background, the cultural lens that he grew up with, and which certainly resonated with, I think, in our group greatly. And we each found an element of connection in his story, which was very special. And I see Sering Norbu from the Tibet Museum is here also. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you.
Welcome.
Oh, this is exciting. We are doing this workshop for the first time from anyone from Tibet. So I am honored. We are honored at JAAGO and this opportunity. So welcome. Thank you. Anyone else have thoughts about how, when you heard a story about someone who might have a completely different lived experience, how did that impact you, or how did you see that? How did that impact the way you understand those people?
I can speak up a little on that. I think one thing that I found interesting about when each of us shared our stories was the connections that we could make between them, and kind of just coming off of the cultural lens, the like historical lens of those cultures, right? Because so much of each of our stories were based on things that people had done, 50 or more years before we were born potentially, but it's still the system and the culture that we live in. And I think all of us kind of connected in that sense, which I found interesting.
Got it. Thanks for sharing, Paul. And so have you done something like this with in the past? Anyone has had a similar, like, sharing stories and thinking, has anyone done something like this in the past? I'm seeing nod heads. Yep. Okay. And thanks, Kirsten. So thanks for joining. And I know you have to drop off, so appreciate it. And so what is the impact of having these kind of conversation? Would love your thoughts. What is the impact of having these kind of conversations? Yeah, Alif. Or Sering, you wanted to go? Oh.
Yeah, Sering, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I think like having this kind of like a workshop or meeting, I just found that more or less like the kind of like how to say, we all come from like a different kind of like the world, but then more or less we are with us having like same feeling, the feeling that I want to have like happiness. I don't want to be like suffering. And so that's like basically, like too much related with that empathy, like we can connect. So I just came to, like realize or know about these things, like having to listen about many stories, like, so more or less in the end, we are connected as we are the one who has got same feelings, the feeling of wanted to happiness and don't want suffering. So we just, like more or less like ultimately, like related with that empathy, like the root causes of why we feel empathy to others, because of all our like all our striving for like happiness, or don't want like suffering. So that's the main reason why we are like talking about the empathy and understanding others, so and so. And being myself as a like as if I talk a little bit about my kind of like a religious belief, I being born as a like Buddhist, but then I'm not that strong believer in Buddhist. But then like basic thing in Buddhist is that we have to think a compassion. Like we have to have like to be like compassionate all the time. So that compassion and that empathy, I think very much kind of like related to each other. So that's why that very kind of like my religious belief brings me very easy to understand about this empathy, like today's topic. So that's how it is like, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sering, for sharing that. Appreciate your perspective. Alif, you had something?
I think I thank you, Sering, for sharing that. It is really profound, what you shared with us, and made me realize that, I think what we are experiencing here is something archetypally human. We are experiencing being human. And just like Sering said, and that's what His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, right? We are all one. We have the same emotions. We are afraid of the same things, in life, which is mostly suffering, and then we need to be compassionate to each other because we are all brothers and sisters at the end. But I think this makes it real. This conversation, being in the same room and experiencing it, takes it just all to another level. And to me, it is a spiritual experience. This, human beings sharing their truth with each other is the most spiritual thing that one can experience. Is such a gift. It's just amazing. I mean, it just really, it's just amazing experience.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. One of the so I invite you all. We have a free app available in your Android and Apple. You can download JAAGO, JAAGO, and you can please give us feedback as well. But you can download this app and continue listening to stories. We have hundreds of stories, like you just had this exercise, and you have a measurable way of growing empathy using the app, 3 minutes a day, and then you share your own story. And what Alif, you just said, which was important, is when people tell their own stories, even if it's just to themselves, and hopefully you can tell your story and record it and upload it into the app, it can change yourself. In fact, and it has a ripple effect on the world. I'll share one of the stories that's in our library in JAAGO is someone who has bipolar disorder. And they were recording their story, and they were telling their story about their experience having bipolar disorder. And as they were telling the story, they are recording this, and we have this video saying, as I'm telling my story, I'm realizing I needed to go get help. I need to now go get help as I was just telling my story. So it is a gift you give yourself. It is a gift you give to the world. And it is how we can truly make a systemic change is by sharing our story, not by, like, one of the things I believe is not challenging someone's story and not saying you're right or you're wrong. But if I share my experience and my story, no one can challenge that. And so that's how I invite you all to do. So I invite you all to check out JAAGO. Use that as a tool. It's free for everyone, for consumers and for organizations that may want to use it. Connect with us, Kevin at JAAGO.life. Our website is JAAGO.life because we believe this is a lifelong thing, and equate it to like a gym. So if you go to work out, you can't just hire a personal trainer and work out once a year and get it and it be done. You need to change habits and do it every day. And so that's what JAAGO can help you do. So with that, I'll kick it back to Leaf and Greg to wrap us up. But I thank you for this opportunity on behalf of Ryan and I to share this space with you. It was magical and amazing. So thank you for that.
Kevin and Ryan, thank you both so much. I really took a lot from this conversation, and I was thinking about how challenging it is for us to be vulnerable for so many of us, because we're conditioned to not expose that part of ourselves. And so I really appreciate this brief moment of time with you all to even start to think about that and stretch the empathy muscles. So thank you. Folks in the audience, you will see that we pasted a link into the chat box asking for your feedback. We would love to hear what you have to say about this particular workshop. And also a reminder, and I'm sure you all have gotten at least one email from me, if not several, to sign up for other workshops in this series leading up to our summit, including tomorrow's workshop on playful strategies to talk about love and forgiveness, which I'm particularly interested in, but lots of other workshops coming up. So please check your emails, sign up for those workshops, participate in them. Remember, we will make the recordings of all of our workshops available. So even if you're not able to participate live with us, you can access the programs at a later date. Alif, is there anything that you would like to add as we close our program today?
Nothing to add except to thank each and every one of you for being here. And thank you so much for Kevin and Ryan in leading us into this really amazing experience of this dialogue and listening. And I absolutely loved your structure, and it was just so efficient and makes it easy for anyone at any age, I think, to just dive into it and just give it a go. This is exactly what I'll do, checking out the app. Thank you so much for being here, and see you next time. Thank you.